Welcome to episode 2 of Betfair's Women's World Cup show with myself, Adno in Sydney and Katie Lambeski over in Melbourne. Well, we're less than a week into the Women's World Cup, and what an unbelievable World Cup it's been so far. We've just heard that 1.5 million tickets have been sold for this World Cup, which is unbelievable. Of course, we know that 1.24 million people tuned in for the Matildas opening match against Ireland, and what an unbelievable occasion that was. Katie, definitely going well so far, I'd say.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We've got a lot to talk about on the field, in the stands. It's capturing the imagination. I think we alluded to the fact that this has been a bit of a slow build. It's been taken a bit of time, but now I think people are really getting into this tournament. I think 27,000 people at Germany versus Morocco in Melbourne on a cold weekday night in Melbourne. Not many events capture the imagination like that. Even on the last Friday in Melbourne, of course, Canada versus Nigeria on a 12 p.m. on a weekday in Melbourne, 20,000 plus people there. This has been awesome, and it's been great to take in the first few days. We've got a long way left to go, and I think it's going to reach, by the time we hit finals, I think we're going to hit boiling point. We're going to hit the fever pitch. So looking forward to breaking it down with you tonight, and of course over the next few weeks as well. We've got a lot to get into.
Absolutely, we do. So let's kick it off with obviously the Matildas. I was at the game there out and at Sydney Olympic Park, and I have to tell you, the roar when the Matildas walked onto the field from 75,000 people in that stadium was just off the charts. It was an incredible occasion to be a part of and to cover. I just have to tell you a story though, because I was doing a radio interview about a few minutes before the team sheets came out, and one of the questions I was asked in that interview was, have there been any late injuries? And my answer was, if we had had any injuries, we would have heard about them by now. And as I put the phone down, there it was, Sam Kerr out of the lineups. It honestly caught everyone in that whole media center by surprise. I'm not sure how the Matildas and Football Australia managed to guard that secret, but obviously a huge blow, and so many of those fans had come to watch Sam, but you know, it didn't detract from the occasion. Of course, it was unbelievable to see the rest of those players take to the field, and obviously had Steph Catley step up and took the captain's armband and that penalty, and she was incredible. But I think it did leave a little bit of disappointment amongst the fans, and of course amongst everyone watching this World Cup. She is, of course, one of the best players in the world. What was interesting after the game and since the game is that there's been very little detail surrounding the actual injury and the severity of the injury, which kind of makes me think either it's worse than they're letting on and she's no chance of playing any of the group games, or it's better than they're letting on, and could she surprise us and play against Nigeria? What are you reading into it, Katie?
I have no idea, to be honest with you. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, but I know that came in for a bit of criticism in and of itself, the way it was handled. I understand it to a point, but at the same time, when you have a global star, our best player arguably, when you have her sustaining an injury, you don't want that getting out. You don't. And it's just, all's fair in love and football at the end of the day. And I think ultimately, I really hope it's okay, and she's back for Nigeria, even as an impact sub for 15-20 minutes. If she can get on the park sooner than we all kind of expect at the moment, great. But at the same time, I think we have to back in our depth. We have to back in the squad that has been selected. There is options there, as we know. So at the same time, let's see where the results takes us. I think we some of it might have to rely on how Nigeria plays out. If, for example, if it goes as I think, and Australia can get a couple of goals ahead, can get themselves ahead in the game early on, I don't see the need to have Sam Kerr come on. I don't. And you put her in ice just a little bit longer for the Canada game, and I think that might be same situation, right? Give her 25 minutes, give her half an hour, ease her back in, and ideally have her cooking by the right time. The knockouts come along. Can't take anything for granted, we know that, but at the same time, I think it's dependent on results, and depending on how good she recovers, I think let's just see. Hopefully it's quicker, but at the same time, let's let this play out a little bit longer. Let's just see how she goes and get her back to full fitness as soon as possible.
I guess the encouraging signs is that she has been walking around. She's wearing a compression bandage, but she seems to be walking around okay. But I think the most important thing is beat Nigeria, then they're through to the next round. Then they actually don't even need to risk playing her against Canada, because obviously there's a very short turnaround and it's only a couple of days after the Nigeria game. So rest her, get through to the next round, and hopefully you don't even have to risk her until those knockout games come about.
Agree. I think at the same time, maybe we don't want her going in completely cold into finals. Maybe we want at least 5-10 minutes under her belt, at least heading into the knockouts. But yeah, let's ultimately, if the team can, I suspect will, if they can get through unscathed, beat Nigeria, even that'll get them through, following that result between Canada and Nigeria, by the way. So that changed a lot of things, I think, as well. So hopefully she's okay. She can come back, get 5 or 10 minutes. Ideally, you want her in the group stages. Ideally, you want her with some time. You don't want to go in completely cold starting in a knockout game. But look, if anyone can do it, it is her. It is her. It would be a brave person to doubt her at this point in time as well.
Yeah. Obviously, the Matildas got through a really physical game against Ireland. I mean, we all knew it was going to be physical, and wow, some of those tackles that flew in, particularly from 𝗂𝗪𝗂𝗪 on the side there, were pretty brutal. 𝗂𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗏 was the victim in most of those tussles, but 𝗂𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗏 did so well herself. 𝗂𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗏, Katrina Gorey, 𝗃𝗏𝗃𝗧, I think 𝗂𝗂𝗃𝗃 Cross, and then of course Mackenzie Arnold towards the end there. They were the real standouts, and the fact that they came away with the 1-0 win, it was tough. They kept a clean sheet. They would have learned a lot going into the next group games, especially coming up against Nigeria, who really pulled off a bit of a surprising result against Canada. I think most people were expecting Canada to really run away with that game, but Nigeria proved very, very tough to break down, and they didn't.
Agreed. And I don't see that changing coming into game 2 with Australia. I think they're going to be up and about after taking a point. They're going to have that confidence. And when that happens, especially in the tournament football, yeah, that can push teams on. That can really will teams on. They've proven that they can compete with some of the higher ranked nations in the world. Australia is very much one of those as well. That's going to be tricky. I still think Australia get that done. At the same time, the depth stands out for Australia. You mentioned those names, Katrina Gorey, phenomenal work rate, unbelievable performance, just the way she covered the ground, work rate, but also just the smarts as well, just understanding space, understanding time, progressing the ball forward, really providing, I think, that crucial link between midfield and attack. I think she makes this team work. She has a partner in 𝗂𝗪𝗃𝗃 who's now stepped up her game, who's leveled up her game, and that's the first choice central midfield pairing, I suspect, through this tournament. They're the form duo. I think they're gonna lead the Matildas on. They're going to be the team that they're going to be the two of the members of the team that we build this team on and build this World Cup on, I think. I'm not sure it's a big call to say that. I think they've got the mentality and the know-how. Absolutely, they've got the technique, they've got the skill set. I loved the way they went about it. Hayley Rasso's toughness, not taking a backward step to 𝗂𝗪𝗃𝗃𝗪. I enjoyed that a lot. That got the team. You could tell that got the team fired up and going as well. It was when Australia needed to answer back that physicality from Ireland. Hayley Rasso stepped up and proved that player. So lots still to even get better on as well. Lots to build on and improve. I think, especially in the first game, a loss would. I'd hate to say loss would have been disastrous. I think a loss or even a draw would leave us a bit shaky. So a win is massive, even more bigger considering what happened between Canada and Nigeria, that draw. And it puts the Matildas in a really strong position heading into game 2.
It certainly does. I mean, you spoke very highly of Katrina Gorey and 𝗂𝗪𝗃𝗃 Cross, and what's wonderful about that partnership is that you have the real experience of Gorey partnered with the real youth of 𝗂𝗪𝗃 Cross. Kyra has come out and said how important Katrina's been for her, and I just think the two of them, you're right, they're gelling so well. such an important part of the field when it comes to winning tournaments, that a lot will depend on them. Katrina's drive into the box was really phenomenal, and especially when you saw Caitlin Foord was struggling to get, I guess, the service she was used to. I think she was struggling a little bit without Sam. Mary Fowler, I think, also might have struggled a little bit on the occasion. But you're right. We've said all along that this is the Matildas' best hope in terms of the squad depth. And now they really have to show it. These players have to step up. They need to show that they don't need to rely on Sam. And they don't, because, wow, did Steph Catley step up, like I mentioned earlier. She's an unbelievable leader. She had no hesitation to take the penalty. It was a perfect penalty, and we've seen a few penalties missed this tournament already, and we can discuss that after this, because we've seen 9 penalties awarded, but only 5 of those have been scored, which has been a bit of a talking point during this World Cup. What do you make of the number of penalties missed so far?
Penalties are a high pressure situation, I think, and I think that stat bears it out a little bit. I think there's this notion that penalties are a lottery, and I'm not sure that's the case. The level of preparation that goalkeepers, who are a special breed in themselves across, in any form of the game, they prepare, they study which way the players are going to take their penalties. They know, okay, the last 3 were taken this side. They know, they prepare, they study. That's part of the preparation, the part of a greater professionalism, I think, in the women's game as well, that you've seen come up as well. So again, there's no substitute for a clutch performer, and I think that's what Steph Catley proved that she was. She's a winner on a penalty spot that I think means a lot to Australian football, the exact same spot that John Aloisi slotted that penalty in 2005. That's a big, big moment, and that's a lot of pressure riding on her shoulders. 75,000 people right behind her back trying to will her onto that penalty, and she made no mistake about it. Again, it's about how you approach it. It's about your mentality toward it, and about just executing on the day. And that's a big, big thing that we see in professional sports, executing in the moment, and Steph Catley did exactly that.
The roar when she slotted that penalty from that crowd was unbelievable. It was just a huge moment. And I think it's worth mentioning these stats that have been going around, because they're quite incredible. Channel 7 shared that a total of 1.24 million viewers watched that Matildas game, which we mentioned. What we didn't mention was that was 3 times as many people who tuned into the first session of the 4th Ashes test. Then you have Nike's Pacific boss, who confirmed that the Matildas have sold more jerseys ahead of this Women's World Cup than the Socceroos did during and since the Men's World Cup. Irish towns moved morning mass times. Brazil changed work times for civil servants so that people could watch the matches. These are just amazing figures. And I think being in Australia, Australians were so privileged to be watching this at the moment.
Absolutely, just phenomenal numbers. There's just a lot of excitement building at this World Cup, and you've seen it blow up in this way. Massive. And I think anyone who says that women's sport can't draw sponsorship, can't draw revenues, can't draw crowds is so wrong. Is so wrong. And I think at the end of the day, the mainstream particularly needs to get on board. The mainstream media needs to get on board, because this World Cup is generating numbers. It's generating clicks, it's generating viewers, watchers, listeners. And I think Sebastian Hassett, working for Football Victoria here, he mentioned that on Twitter, and I thought that's a spot on point. Again, get behind this World Cup. Get behind this World Cup. Also, don't leave it here as well. Get behind the Matildas. Continue to make the game better. Continue to make the game professional, because people want more of it. People gravitate toward a World Cup. Yes, absolutely. They gravitate toward the big tournaments. This is one of them. But something's changing here, and I think the tide is finally turning to the point that it's been a hard road for women in sport for a very, very long time, as we know. But those days are looking well and truly past us now. The point is, we need to keep growing. We need to keep growing the game. Continue to invest. Governments, especially government funding at the grassroots level, needs to change. It needs to improve, and this is a signpost as to why. If you're not getting the message now, I'm not sure when you are honestly. This is an exciting time, but don't leave it here. There's still a lot to go, and we can even be better. But those are some brilliant numbers floating around, and shows just the desire and the appetite is there for this World Cup and for this team, absolutely.
Totally. Couldn't agree with you more. I suppose let's touch on some other results that we've seen. We've obviously seen, I guess, two of the biggest results and probably two of the most impressive performances were for Germany beating Morocco 6-0. We saw 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗦 come on and score a brace, and she's definitely going to be there or thereabouts in the race for the Golden Boot. Then we saw Brazil beating Panama 4-0, and they were impressive. What was even more impressive, and I know we've mentioned the crowds and everything, but that vibe in Adelaide, it sounded like the majority of the crowd singing the Brazilian anthem. It was like goosebumps. It was amazing.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Some of the emotion that the anthems have been sung with as well. It was like from the players, the colours in the stands, the noise in the stands. It just adds a whole nother dimension. Like international football has the ability to bring that out in fans. It connects at a deeper level than what the club game does, and this is exact reason as to why. It's exact showing as to why that happens. It's just it's been remarkable. Like even Portugal's their first World Cup and the anthem being sung by the players there, tears in their eyes. That's an emotional that speaks to the soul type of thing, and it's fantastic. I love it. But even Brazil, like Adelaide, fantastic showing. 𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗦 Stadium is beautiful. I know that they've done work on the stadium. But yeah, and Brazil showed up. I think world football needs a strong Brazil. I think world football likes a strong Brazil. I think, ultimately 𝗃𝗂𝗽𝗪𝗧𝗧 in full effect last night, especially some of the build up to those goals. Brilliant, beautiful football. We mentioned that. I think you mentioned them last week as a contender. I think it's a positive sign in that direction. Absolutely. I know Panama, not a powerhouse, not someone you consider a contender, no. But at the same time, it's executing on the day, and Brazil did exactly that. They showed up. Brilliant result, and a match by the scenes in the stands, of course.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess those are the two teams that have impressed the most, but the USA obviously impressed also with their 3-0 win over Vietnam. Not the strongest opposition, but still came up with the goods. England struggled a little bit for their 1-0 against Haiti, but they came away with the win. Sweden really got a last-minute win against South Africa, which broke my heart a little bit because South Africa is my home country, and I thought that South Africa were really going to hang on there for a draw at least, and it was a bit heartbreaking at the end. But Sweden also there or thereabouts as a contender. And I guess for the teams that had a bit of a tough opening game, sometimes that turns out to be a good thing because it kind of gets them to focus very early on what they need to work on, and they often tend to push on and have pretty good tournaments. But who stood out for you?
To be honest with you, I did end up enjoying the US's performance. I thought, they're obviously the overwhelming favourites. I think, particularly from her end, in the form of 𝗪𝗺 𝗪𝗺, her World Cup debut, and comes on and scores a brace. They didn't break out a sweat in that game, right? They came out, they got out and got exactly what they came for. I think, yes, we talk about Golden Boot, so 𝗪𝗺 𝗪𝗺 is right in that race as well. So Megan Rapinoe coming off the bench as well, so she's someone who they're also going to build into the tournament, build into the World Cup as this goes on. The US still look very, very strong. Good to touch on Sweden and South Africa. I tell you, only a World Cup can have me watching Sweden and South Africa on tenterhooks, and I found myself cheering on South Africa. I wanted them to hang on. But it wasn't to be. I think tough conditions to contend in, tough conditions to play in. South Africa were brilliant. I thought for long parts in that game, just disciplined. People think a defensive approach is a negative one. I don't agree with that. I think at the end of the day, that takes concentration. It takes focus, concentration on space, concentration on marking, concentration on getting the counter-attack going, which they did on a couple of times, just some absolute blistering pace on the counter-attack. But the Swedes had just that extra level. The Swedes had that level of that they stepped up on, and they had to find a gear, and that's going to be key, as you mentioned. It's about growing into the tournament. It's not necessarily about coming out and blitzing the group stages. Not necessarily. It doesn't always play out that way. So building into the tournament, building that confidence, building that even that fitness level, especially for teams who have fitness concerns coming in, that's going to be getting that balance right. So yeah, so there's still a lot left to play out. I think every team at this point in time, as we film on Tuesday night, will have played their first game as well. So the first round of games is done. So it only gets bigger from here. The challenges are here, and the underdogs are really stepping up. So I don't think you can take a moment of this World Cup for granted at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw in the Men's World Cup, Argentina losing to Saudi Arabia early on and then going on to win the tournament. So the way you start really doesn't always dictate the way you finish. Having said that, I think the USA are still looking like favorites. Would you agree with that?
Yes. I think it would be remiss of us not to mention Spain, though. Spain and Germany, I think they took my notice as well. So Spain particularly showing out on that 3-0 win over Costa Rica. Just some of the combinations that they were playing, just some of the intricate passing moves was really, they looked like a team that were well drilled and that they knew each other's game. So they I think technically they're absolutely astounding to me, and I think that they're going to be in there when all's said and done. The US have the confidence. The US have that mix of young and old through the squad. As you mentioned, Sophia Smith scoring goals early on is a very good sign. But technically, I think Spain really caught my eye. I think we have to give them a lot of credit heading in, and they're going to be a danger team, particularly toward the latter stages. And if that opening game is anything to go off. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, Spain technically astounding. It kind of all makes sense, doesn't it? And then of course you've got Italy, who beat Argentina 1-0. That was a really big result for them also. So looking forward to this week. What excites you the most? Obviously, we have the huge Matildas versus Nigeria game. And then obviously on the same group, we have Canada, Nigeria, Canada, Ireland, which is also going to be a huge game to dictate the standings of the group. But which other game are you most looking forward to this week?
England and Denmark is going to be a tricky one, I think. I mean, given that England had a challenge against Haiti, eked out the win. Yes, I think Denmark were in a similar position, eking out a similar 1-0 result against China. I think that's going to go a long way to determining how that group, I think, ultimately plays out. England and Denmark are still my picks to progress in that, but it's a matter of, again, performing, the underdogs aren't taking a step back this World Cup, I think, and we saw that with Jamaica even in their draw against France, hanging on on a wet Sydney football stadium as well. So France and Brazil is also going to be one that is on Saturday evening, this coming Saturday at 8 o'clock. So that's going to be a big contest between a France side who will feel that they could have done better against Jamaica, who felt once they could get going, I thought once they got that speed of ball movement, that speed of passing going, they really rattled Jamaica. I think Jamaica responded. The rain came down. I think that made conditions a little bit tricky. But with Les Sommer and Gianni as well, they have the ability to put teams to the sword on their day. If one of those chances goes in, I think look out. I think Brazil will be in with the right challenge. So I'm looking forward to that one as we approach the end of that second round. So I'm a little bit devastated that Canada and the Canada and Ireland game kicks off at 10 p.m. here in Melbourne. I think that's going to be a massive game. But on a late weekday. But I might make an exception for that. I might push through and watch that one in full. So yeah, the contests keep on rolling. The games keep on rolling thick and fast through today and throughout the next few days as well.
You won't be the only one. I think there'll be a lot of people pulling a late night to watch that game. And you're right, that France-Brazil game is shaping up to be a pretty good game. We saw France struggle with that 0-0 against Jamaica, and they obviously lost against the Matildas just before the World Cup started. But they have the coach, Renard, who was Saudi Arabia's coach who beat Argentina in the Men's World Cup. So if anyone knows, you know, how to improve as the tournament goes, I think he'll get that France squad firing at the right time during the tournament. Well, I'm looking forward to another week of amazing World Cup action. It's been phenomenal. And I'm sure you are too, Katie. So please don't forget to join us next week and just enjoy taking in this momentous football on this momentous occasion. Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me once again. Great fun. Enjoy the games. Get out to games as well, everyone. And we'll be here to break it all down for you next week as course.
Absolutely. Thanks, Katie.
What's gambling really costing you? For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.